am not teaching, I am publicly learning. But hi and welcome to learning for the Life in UK test part 501 by doing morning stretching. And if you participate in the morning stretching, let's set your own risk. Now we have here Alexander Fleming. He was a doctor and he was researching influenza, or also called the flu, in 1928, and when he discovered penicillin. When and after this penicillin was further developed by Howard Florey and Ernest Chain, it became a usable drug and was mass-produced, or from the 1940s on mass-produced. Fleming won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1945. Penicillin is used to treat bacterial infections. Do we have any more information than just say bacterial infections? Not now. Okay, I try not to shoot a separate video in which I'm going to explain what we have learned about Alexander Fleming. So I have now a second camera running, and now I try to explain in one video what we had about Alexander Fleming. Howard Florey. Okay, let's just try it. We're going to do a second take. If they come with it. Alexander Fleming. In 1928, Alexander Fleming was researching influenza, or called the flu, when he discovered penicillin. And Howard Florey and Ernest Chain developed it even further, and by the 1940s it was mass-produced as a usable drug. And it is used to treat bacterial infections. In 1945, Alexander Fleming won the Nobel Prize. And that's according to the Life in UK Test Handbook, page 52. I didn't get a Nobel Prize in Medicine, I wasn't sure about it. But I think it's okay. So I'm going to stop the camera. And now we have time for the morning stretching. But there are two things. The first thing is I stumbled across something. We were talking about war with France and British, and there was written that in France there was a revolution, and soon the government declared war in France, 1789, I think was it. Now I just stumbled across it, and this is more complex. So I think I didn't start chronologically, but it started probably with. So the first thing, the French Revolution was not just in 1789, it lasted for 10 years, from 1789 until 1799. So for 10 years, I said in 1 year, it was 10 years ago. There were the Jacobin Club in Toulouse. So Toulouse is a city very south of France, at the coast. And there was the Jacobin Club. Now, I tried to find out what they have to do with the Jacobins. I couldn't find it out. I already said, as we talked about the Jacobins, he was written, these are the people supporting James or his successors on the throne instead of the other people. Now I already had a problem with the pronunciation because multiple languages, but Jacobitism seems to be supporting James or his successors on the British throne. And that there are the Jacobins. I don't know, I knew about the Jacobins in France and the persecuted in the French Revolution. So where we have to find out more about who are the Jacobins, are there different Jacobins or whatever. So in Toulouse there was a very influential anti-royalist Jacobin club. I don't know if they have something to do with the Jacobins in Scotland. And they were supported by the British. So they were probably not for James on the throne. Yeah, the point is that Britain sieged then Toulouse with the British Navy. It's on the Mediterranean Sea at the south of France. And that port was by the... So it can't be... If a club was anti-royalists, Toulouse was then by the royalists? There were multiple different groups fighting. So, and there was written that the people of this Jacobins club, this influential big Jacobins club, it had 500,000 members or so in France, that they were evicted Now we had also the problem that I didn't know what the word evicted was, because after the Highland clearance, after there was the support for Bonnie Prince Charlie, there were evictions very common in Scotland. And when I looked it up, evictions means to make the people go away, to force them to leave, to evict them from the country, to say you have to go from here. So something pretty serious. And these Jacobins were then evicted and also persecuted, and also they were killed. I'm going to talk now quite a lot about war. And so the British Navy was now besieging on Toulouse. And it was the first interaction of the British Navy with the French Navy at the Battle of Trafalgar 1805. So 15 years later or so. And so the French Revolution was not just in 1789. Marie Antoinette, she was the wife of Leopold XVI. Marie Antoinette was, I'm going to talk now about serious subjects, more about war and serious subjects. She was executed in 1793, so 4 years after the French Revolution was she executed. So the French Revolution lasted over years. Also William XVI, the 14th, not the 16th, the 16th was executed. And his wife Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette had a brother, and he was the leader or the king, Leopold II, of the Holy Roman Empire. Holy Roman Empire is basically the place where Germany today is. Marie Antoinette was one of the sisters of Teresa of Austria. So Leopold II, the king also of the Holy Roman Empire, declared in the Plymouth, whatever, together with the Prussian king Frederick William II, that they would interfere in France if something would happen, for example, to the sister, to Marie Antoinette. France saw this as a general threat, and there then broke out war between some countries, I don't know, Prussia and France, and the Holy Roman Empire was now connected, and Austria also. So there was then war, and the British Navy had already engagement in Toulouse, was besieging Toulouse because the Jacobins were persecuted. And that all led them to the first war of a coalition of multiple countries against France, because they wanted to restore the monarchy. That was one of their reasons. And that was when also the time when Napoleon, he was not the monarch, the monarch was Leopold XVI, but he was executed in 49, I think, 1749. Napoleon could make wins in this first war of a coalition. Now the first war of a coalition ended then with the Treaty of Amiens. No, it was the second war of a coalition. I basically have no background information to about it. I just stumbled across that one. And Britain stayed then in the fight. That was and there actually an invasion was planned. We talked in 3 videos ago about that. If Hitler tried an invasion to Britain, Napoleon planned an invasion. And there was also an invasion to Ireland 2 times. The first time they came into storms with the French Navy. The second time they landed with 2,000 troops in Ireland. That was 100 years after the Bonnie Prince Charlie thing. It was with Napoleon. And France planned an invasion, but Napoleon was too busy in Egypt and other campaigns, and also in Austria and somewhere else. And so that invasion did not happen, but that threat consisted the whole time. And then the third war of a coalition broke out, and they were battling again. And that was based, and then in the third war of a coalition from 1802 until 1805, that ended then more or less with the Battle of Trafalgar. And so basically it was not just the French Revolution in 1889 and France declaring war on Britain, but it was persecution of Jacobins. Probably they were supporting, but if they were anti-royalists, why they weren't persecuted? Maybe it was the other way around. With the British Navy sieging on Toulouse and other countries supporting the monarchy, like Holy Roman Empire and Prussia. And then war, when there was no war, when Napoleon was also defeated and there was a treaty then. But Britain stayed at war and Britain went alone. But when the next war of a coalition broke out, there were 7 all the way from 1789 until 1815. It was on the Battle of Waterloo, the last one, I think. So there's way more going on, and we will do research to all of it. We will, a part of this, we will go further into it. We will not let it by the sentence, soon the British government, soon the French government declared war on Britain. We will look at all these different things. And why? because to learn from history. Because most of the wars are not just, Soviet wars are not repeated. Most of the wars are not just black and white, one person is bad and wars lead it, but it's more complex. Now it's a fair argument. It's not that bad of a situation to want to restore monarchy in another country, or if your sister is threatened and then executed, or that when one country comes into war and you are in a coalition with a country that you're also in the war, or if the Jacobin clubs are persecuted and killed at large numbers, and also with the How Jacobins, that the British Navy is sieging onto Toulouse, or if these countries are at war with the Morecamps, or Austria at war if the sister of Teresa, the Empress of Austria, is then executed. But also that the revolution happens because there's great injustice happens. So basically the point is that we maybe can see at least Napoleonic wars that war is not black and white, that is not a bad person, but that everyone basically has their own interests, little interests, more like grey areas. But if multiple grey areas come on top of each other, it ends up with a black interest. So if everyone just follows some little interests, and it can result then in the war, but it's not one person's bad or the other one, everyone has profound reasons maybe to engage, and that it's not enough. There is the sentence, it's for the win of the evil or for the bad, it's not enough. It is enough if the good does nothing. So for the win of the bad, it is enough if the good does nothing, or for the win of the evil. So basically, to just do only the own interests and to act just by little things is not enough. It's going to end up in Napoleonic wars. And there also was a third point. We had respect others and for opinions, treat others with fairness, and look after yourself and your family. Treat others with fairness is not enough, because it's a grey area. Treat others with fairness. For the win of evil, it is enough if the good do nothing. So it is necessary to act with kindness, to assume benevolence. So it's not enough to follow own interests, to go into a coalition with Prussia if France is doing that and that. But it's not enough. It's not enough to act after grey areas. It has to be acting with kindness to avoid war. If everyone just acts after fairness for themselves and after more or less grey areas, that is not enough. It's going to end up in the evil. It is enough for the good to do nothing. And if the people acting in grey areas, the good is basically do nothing, and it ends up in war. So maybe we can learn from these Napoleonic wars. So we will do research into that more in several videos, a part of all this Life in the UK test series. The second thing which I stumbled across was the Elizabeth Tower in London. Now, we had to, in a way, had to notice it because there was written with the Houses of Parliament in London, this Westminster Palace, that we were already used as the House of Parliament for the House of Commons and House of Lords for 700 years or so. But that it was rebuilt in the 19th century in the revival of the Gothic style. Now, and that is because in 1833, that building burned down. There was a fire and the building burned down, and it was then rebuilt in the 19th century in the new revival of the Gothic style. And also the Elizabethan Tower was built, and the bell then was in 1859, it was, I think, made. I stumbled across it all. I have basically now background information to all of what I just said, also the Napoleonic Wars. I just stumbled across it since the last video. And now the person who the words were responsible for the installation, I don't know what of the tower of the bell, the person who was there doing some architecture stuff or was doing the bell or the installation of that heavy bell, they said something about 43 long tons. I don't know what long tons are. So the bell is heavy. It needed 30 hours to, and there was no new word also, to wind it up, not to winch it up. So that means to winch a bell up. Whatever. So the person responsible for all that with the bell hoisting, that was Sir Benjamin Hall. And that is why the bell is called Big Ben or the Hall Tower. So four major things. We will look into the Napoleonic Wars and learn from them for the future. That it's not enough to act with fairness or in grey areas. It has to be assuming benevolence. It has to be acting with kindness. It has to be acting good. That the Palace of Westminster burned down in 1843, and that is why it was rebuilt in the new revival of the Gothic style. The person responsible for the bell hoisting of the Big Ben of Elizabeth Tower was Sir Benjamin Hall, and that is why it's called Big Ben. And evictions means to force people to leave. Now, that wasn't with the morning strategy, but whatever. I thank you very much, and until next time.